Think horror films only ruin the lives of the characters on screen? Think again. Some movies are so cursed, so controversial, or so catastrophically received that they don't just haunt audiences, they destroy the people who made them. Careers vanish, names are blacklisted, directors disappear into obscurity, and all that's left is the film itself, like a bloodstain no one can scrub out. This isn't about your typical flops. This is about horror films that ruined reputations, not because they were bad, but because they were too strange, too raw, or too close to something Hollywood wasn't ready to face. A sexually charged vampire tale from the 1,960 seconds that derailed a rising auteur. A cannibalistic pseudo-documentary that got its director arrested for murder. A forgotten sequel to a classic that no one wanted to admit existed. These are films that scorched everything they touched on screen and off, from productions cursed by chaos to stories that stepped on too many political or moral landmines. These are the horror movies that didn't just end careers, they became the reason those careers never came back. Some directors never made another film. Some actors vanished without a trace. And in every case, the horror didn't stop. When the cameras cut, it only just began. Let's dive right into the darkness. 1. The Other Side of the Wind, shot 1,970 seconds, released 2018. When it finally emerged in 2018, critics hailed it as visionary, but Welles wasn't there to see it. He had died in exile, his masterpiece long abandoned. This wasn't just a career ruined, it was a life consumed. Because sometimes, the horror isn't in the film itself, but in what it costs to finish it. Welles poured everything into it. Ego, genius, bitterness. But the industry turned its back. Funding vanished. Actors died. Studios lost interest. It was the film that broke him emotionally and professionally. When it finally emerged in 2018, critics hailed it as visionary, but Welles wasn't there to see it. He had died in exile, his masterpiece long abandoned. This wasn't just a career ruined, it was a life consumed. Because sometimes, the horror isn't in the film itself, but in what it costs to finish it. 2. The Ninth Configuration, 1,980. A castle, a group of soldiers, and a question that haunts the soul. What is sanity? Written and directed by William Peter Blatty, yes, the author of The Exorcist, The Ninth Configuration, is a philosophical horror story wrapped in military psychodrama. Rich in existential dread and black comedy, it was too cerebral for horror fans, too bleak for mainstream appeal. Despite critical acclaim and a Golden Globe, the film flopped. Studios distanced themselves. Blatty, despite his pedigree, was never trusted with direction again. In the eyes of the system, it wasn't a horror failure. It was a warning. Even the man behind The Exorcist wasn't safe from exile. 3. Begotten 1990. A god disembowels himself. The earth bleeds, and no one speaks. Begotten is unlike any film ever made. A grainy, black and white fever dream of death, birth, and decay. There's no dialogue, no narrative structure, only images burned into your retinas like a cursed reel left to rot. Director E. Elias Meriguez poured years into the film, which was praised for its originality and shunned for its opacity. No studio would touch him. The mainstream recoiled. Though he later directed Shadow of the Vampire, his name faded quickly, buried under the weight of his own ambition. When you make something so different, so otherworldly, it either births a new era or buries you beneath it. 4. Possession, 1,981. It's not a divorce story. It's a mental breakdown wrapped in cosmic horror. In Possession, Isabelle Adjani plays a woman spiraling into madness and something far more monstrous amid the ruins of a failing marriage in Cold War Berlin. Her performance is volcanic, her unraveling, violent, and unrelenting. The film polarized critics. Audiences walked out. It was banned in the UK. Yet Adjani, despite winning Best Actress at Cannes, was psychologically wrecked. She took a 2-year hiatus from acting, citing the toll the role had taken. Director Andrzej Żuławski's career in the West stalled completely. The film, now hailed as visionary, had scorched its creators when no one was ready for its truths. Sometimes the scariest creature in a horror film is the part of yourself you're forced to show. 5. Cannibal Holocaust, 1,980. They said it was just a movie. The courts weren't so sure. Cannibal Holocaust begins as a faux documentary about missing filmmakers in the Amazon. What it becomes is a nightmarish descent into brutality so real, the director was arrested for murder. Ruggero Deodato had crafted a film so disturbingly convincing, so soaked in blood and despair, that many believed he had orchestrated actual killings. Though he eventually proved his actors were alive, the damage was done. His name became synonymous with cruelty. And then there were the real atrocities, actual animal deaths on screen, which led to bans worldwide. Critics called it inhumane. The industry called him radioactive. Deodato never escaped the shadow of his masterpiece, because when horror blurs into reality, someone always pays the price. 6. The Devils, 1971. Religious hysteria, naked nuns, and one of the most censored films ever made. Ken Russell's The Devils explores the true story of a priest in 17th century France accused of witchcraft and sexual corruption. Visually extravagant and politically savage, the film was instantly banned in multiple countries. Even the edited versions were considered too extreme. Russell was labeled a provocateur, a moral degenerate, and a threat to the industry. Lead actor Oliver Reed, too, found his career slowed under the weight of controversy. The film would later be hailed as a masterpiece, but too late for those it had already crushed. Sometimes the real exorcism is what the industry does to your name. 7. Caligula, 1979. Orgies, executions, and a film that devoured itself. Caligula was supposed to be an epic about Rome's most depraved emperor. Instead, it became a cinematic scandal. With a script by Gore Vidal, starring Malcolm McDowell and Helen Mirren, it was ambitious until producer Bob Guccione secretly inserted hardcore porn into the final cut. The fallout was catastrophic. Vidal distanced himself. Actors disowned the project. Director Tinto Brass sued. McDowell, known for A Clockwork Orange, saw his career momentum derail for years. What should have been prestige became perversion. Some films don't blur the line between art and filth. They cross it, burn it, and salt the earth behind them. 8. Boxing Helena, 1993. Love her too much, and you might never let her go. Boxing Helena tells the story of a surgeon who amputates the limbs of the woman he's obsessed with, keeping her trapped in a twisted illusion of intimacy. The plot is disturbing. The execution? Even more so. Plagued by legal battles, Madonna and Kim Basinger both pulled out and sued. The film was cursed before release. Jennifer Lynch, daughter of David Lynch, faced intense scrutiny. Critics called her debut exploitative, misogynistic, and amateurish. The backlash was swift and brutal. Lynch disappeared from filmmaking for nearly a decade. In Hollywood, being daring can get you noticed. But being daring and female? That can get you erased. 9. Maximum Overdrive, 1986. The machines rose. The director fell. Stephen King's first and only directorial effort, Maximum Overdrive, envisions a world where electronics gain sentience and rebel against human. Trucks mow down pedestrians, ATMs, insult customers, and vending machines kill baseball coaches. Fueled by cocaine and ego, King later admitted he barely remembered making it. The film's production was chaotic, including a near-fatal accident involving a camera operator. Critics eviscerated the movie, citing its tonal confusion and juvenile chaos. King swore off directing for life, and the film, now a cult oddity, stands as a cautionary tale. Even the master of horror can become his own worst nightmare. 10. The Fanatic, 2019. He just wanted an autograph. What he left was blood. The Fanatic stars John Travolta as Moose, an unstable movie fan who becomes dangerously obsessed with his favorite actor. It's a descent into delusion and violence, awkwardly framed by a screenplay that never decides if it's satire or slasher. Directed by Limp Bizkit frontman Fred Durst, the film was mocked mercilessly for its tone-deaf portrayal of autism, its wooden dialogue, and Travolta's exaggerated performance. The movie bombed at the box office and was named one of the worst films of 2019. Travolta's career, already fragile, took a devastating blow. Durst's ambitions as a filmmaker disintegrated entirely. Sometimes horror isn't in the story. It's in the spectacle of a legacy unraveling frame by painful frame. 11. The Bell Jar, 1979. It was supposed to be prestige. It became poison. Based on Sylvia Plath's harrowing semi-autobiographical novel, The Bell Jar follows Esther Greenwood, a brilliant but mentally unraveling woman in 1950 Seconds, New York. What could have been a chilling psychological descent turned instead into a dull, miscast melodrama. Critics eviscerated it. Plath's fans called it blasphemy. And lead actress Marilyn Hassett, once dubbed the next Jane Fonda, saw offers vanish overnight. Even Plath's estate disavowed it. The horror here wasn't supernatural, it was reputational. The kind that suffocates slowly, without scream or spectacle. Some bells toll quietly, but they echo forever. 12. Look What's Happened to Rosemary's Baby, 1976. It was supposed to be prestige. It became poison. Based on Sylvia Plath's harrowing semi-autobiographical novel, The Bell Jar follows Esther Greenwood, a brilliant but mentally unraveling woman in 1950 Seconds New York. What could have been a chilling psychological descent turned instead into a dull, miscast melodrama. No one involved escaped unscathed. Patty Duke, stepping into the role of Rosemary, took a career hit she'd never fully recover from. Director Sam Osteen, despite editing masterpieces, never directed again. Fans rejected it, studios ignored it, and for decades, many horror buffs didn't even know it existed. Not every child of Satan gets a second chance. Some just get canceled mid-rebirth. 12. Look What's Happened to Rosemary's Baby, 1976. A garden party, a whispering breeze, and a girl possessed by a vampire's soul. Roger Vadim's Blood and Roses reimagined Sheridan Le Fanu's Carmilla through a lush, sensual lens. Set against the backdrop of a European estate, it weaves lesbian undertones, dreamlike imagery, and suppressed desire into an aesthetic horror ballet. But 1960 wasn't ready. Censors balked. Critics branded it perverse. Vadim's shift from romantic drama to sensual horror cost him dearly in Hollywood, where producers saw him as a liability. Despite the film's visual poetry, its content was deemed morally unstable. 13. Blood and Roses, 1960. 14. Curtains, 1983. 6 actresses, 1 role, and someone's killing to get it. Curtains takes the slasher formula backstage into a wintry nightmare where ambition turns murderous. Trapped in a secluded mansion, a group of women auditioning for the same part begin disappearing, stalked by a killer in a porcelain doll mask. What was meant to be a psychological horror masterpiece turned into chaos behind the scenes. Multiple rewrites, on-set disputes, and the firing of director Richard Siupka left the film hacked into an incoherent mess. The result? An atmospheric cult oddity with jarring tonal shifts and missing pieces. Lead actress Samantha Eggar, fresh off award nominations, vanished from major film roles afterward. Siupka disowned the project entirely. Curtains didn't just waste its potential, it shredded reputations. Because in this industry, nothing kills faster than a film that promises art and delivers confusion. 15. The Kindred, 1987. It's wet, it's breathing, and it's calling him brother. In The Kindred, a young geneticist returns home to uncover his late mother's secrets, only to discover a grotesque sibling mutation lurking in the basement. Part mad science, part monster movie, the film simmers with 80 seconds practical effects and ooze-soaked paranoia. Though the film gained cult respect over time, its release was botched. Studio indifference and poor marketing meant few saw it, and fewer still understood its tone, a tragic blend of maternal guilt and body horror. Director Jeffrey Obrow, once considered a promising horror mind, saw his ascent stall. He never helmed another studio-backed film of this scale again. The Kindred became a textbook case of a strong idea sinking in the wrong hands. It's not just the creature that's malformed, it's the industry's ability to recognize its own monsters. Sometimes the true horror isn't what grows in the dark, but what fails to grow in the light. Bonus pick, Madman, 1989. Before we wrap, here's one more horror film you need to add to your list. She thought she was reading fiction, but fiction was writing her back. In Madman, a bookstore clerk becomes obsessed with a pulp horror novel about a disfigured doctor who murders people to steal their facial features. As she reads deeper, the killer seemingly steps out of the book and into her life. The premise is terrifyingly clever. A slasher born from imagination, bridging fantasy and madness with eerie precision. The visuals are drenched in shadow and dream logic, with stop-motion flourishes that make reality feel warped at the edges. But the film's cleverness was its curse. Misunderstood by studios and overlooked by audiences, Madman flopped hard. Star Jenny Wright, praised for her grounded performance amid surreal chaos, vanished from lead roles soon after. Director Tibor Takacs, fresh off the success of The Gate, never again touched a project with this much creative ambition. Critics later called it a hidden gem, but by then, the damage was done. It's a story about reading something so dark, it reads you back. And in Hollywood, sometimes the scariest thing you can be is original. Think horror films only ruin the lives of the characters on screen? Think again. Some movies are so cursed, so controversial, or so catastrophically received that they don't just haunt audiences, they destroy the people who made them. Careers vanish, names are blacklisted, directors disappear into obscurity. And all that's left is the film itself, like a blood stain no one can scrub out. This isn't about your typical flops. This is about horror films that ruined reputations, not because they were bad, but because they were too strange, too raw, or too close to something Hollywood wasn't ready to face. A sexually charged vampire tale from the 1,960 seconds that derailed a rising auteur. A cannibalistic pseudo-documentary that got its director arrested for murder, a forgotten sequel to a classic that no one wanted to admit existed. These are films that scorched everything they touched on, screen, and off. From productions cursed by chaos, to stories that stepped on too many political or moral landmines, these are the horror movies that didn't just end careers, they became the reason those careers never came back. Some directors never made another film. Some actors vanished without a trace. And in every case, the horror didn't stop when the cameras cut it, only just began. Let's dive right into the darkness. If you've made it this far, you already know horror doesn't end when the credits roll. Sometimes it begins there. If you enjoy uncovering the buried, the forgotten, and the reputations left in ruins, consider staying with us. The Night Shriek will keep digging, and what we find next may be even darker.